Well, welcome back everyone, and as you can see here, the first train is running, proving that yes, the concept works in as far as a train chasing its own tail on an oval of track works. So nothing new. All we've done here is just making sure we've got electrical connectivity to the main oval. It's just a test run. But I said in one of my earlier videos that life has the way of getting in the way of hobbies. So I expected to reach this basic stage a lot earlier. And thanks to a sudden bout of illness and then a return to full work schedules where I wasn't able to get much done, we don't get here until a bit later than I expected. But doesn't matter, it's a hobby. It's not a race against time. But we have got a train on an oval of track, as basic as you can get, going around in a circle. There you go. Wonders will never cease. Hardly a breathtaking breakthrough in model engineering. But there's always something, well, to me anyway, there's always something special about having a train running, a model train. I'm actually shooting, it's afternoon here, so I'm getting light through the window. I'm actually shooting against the light half the time, so this is not looking all that great. So what we have here is a Britannia, British Rail Britannia class 462 Pacific locomotive, holding a sort of mixed rake of 3 Hornby and 1 old Triang carriage, just for testing purposes. Carriages are unweighted. If you saw one of my previous videos about weight, you know they tend to rabbit on the topic of having weighted rolling stock. The engine is, well, it's near new. It's almost brand new, I'd say. I got it second hand at an auction, and it's tender drive, which means the motor is in the tender like a little diesel, and so it's actually pushing the locomotive and pulling the carriages, and as such it is an astonishingly poor performer. It needs to run in clearly. The mechanism is still very tight. I had to remove a bit of a bind from the axles and so forth, and from the valve gear. So it's something that might improve. I did not know it was tender drive. I tend not to like tender driven steam locomotives, so yeah, there you go. Still, I didn't pay full price for it, so. I do like the Britannias though. They're one of the last standard British steam engines, and I always sort of had a soft spot for them. So there we are. Trains are up and running. Bit later than I had anticipated, but you know, schedules get readjusted. Now at the moment, admittedly, this looks nothing. You know, we're running basic power. I have yet to decide on certain features, such as where the control points will be. There's still a lot of work to do. The track needs to be painted, ballasted, firmly pinned in place. It's just sitting there loose on the baseboard. You can see the bit across the middle here is that thing there is where the return loop will go. Some of the baseboard is wider than it needs to be in places because I've been debating with our old double track part of this. So it's sort of at the stage where you sort of wing it, you know. Nothing's written in stone about where this will go at this point. We've got the benchwork depressed to have the viaduct. I do love a railway viaduct, and which is there. Again, I'm shooting against the light, so you just get mostly shadows, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But this area in here will be recessed and sloped down into this valley of our small brick arch viaduct is. We've got our access hatch cut, as you can see, so now I can get to all points of the layout very easily. Up the back here, this spur that comes off just the back of where the locomotive is at the moment, that goes around. It's the start of the railroad throat to the terminus, which is going to be down here where all this junk is. So in the construction I decided to elevate that slightly just for visual purposes. It just lifts that track at the back up a little bit so it's more easily seen. And that's sort of things you sort of do as during construction. You just decide that you'll change this, or maybe this would work better. It's hard to tell everything on flat paper. You got to get stuff down here and get it running. You know, I'm looking now at overhangs of carriages and make sure that I'm going to have adequate clearance for things. But we do have a train running, and it's only been a week and a half or so since, not quite 2 weeks since the project was started. So I'm pretty pleased with the progress. Still a lot of work to do, a lot of refinement to do, and this is really just testing, and mainly running that engine in particularly, because it was very stiff out of the box. The other thing is one of my other pet peeves about model trains is you can hear that electric motor screaming its head off in that tender. It sounds nothing like a steam train, obviously, because it isn't one. It's an electric model toy. But now sound, whoops, try not to knock everything flying. Sound has become a big factor in model railways, that you can get sound modules for these trains so that they sound like steam engines. And I'll definitely be doing that, because that sounds nothing like anything but an electric motor. And it does tend to ruin, you know, part of the effect we're going for. We go to great lengths to have model engines that look authentic and detailed and so forth, and carriages and the track work and the scenery, and then it sounds like a tiny little electric toothbrush. So I definitely wanted something to mask that, and you couldn't get digitized sound until fairly recently in the hobby. So that's a big improvement. You can get little battery operated sound modules that will go inside the engine, and with a motion sensor that detects when the thing's moving. Quite fond of those. You can get certain types of control systems known as DCC that now have sound built in. So that to me has got to be probably the biggest improvement in the hobby, is that they can now not only look the part but also sound the part. And to me that's a big thing, you know, just to actually hear something that sounds like a steam train, because they make a wonderful distinctive noise, particularly steam engines. Diesel just sort of, you know, grunt along like a big truck, but they have steam engines actually sounding the part. So there we are, that's where we're up to. As I say, again, fairly basic and fairly boring, just a train going in a circle. But it's my train, on my track, on my layout, in my garage. And as such, you know, it's always a thrill. I've had trains since I was a little kid, since I was 5, and my daddy made me my first ever layout, and it was clockwork back then. Yes, I'm that old. And, you know, I've always had that thrill of watching a model train go around. So the next thing is to get on to doing some of the less fun, tedious bits of final track laying, cleaning, checking electrical connections, ballasting. I'm going to use ballast mat just for quick and easy convenience, because this track arrangement may not be the actual final one. And then we're going to start on some scenery so that it doesn't look as boring as it does now. Seeing this area in here going to be slightly recessed, and then it will raise up this part here. There'll be a village plan to go on here, but like I said, at this stage now it's going to be like you'll be winging it, you know, see what fits, what looks good, what works, trial and error. I've got ideas but nothing firmly set, and a lot of that is part of the fun, to sort of make it up as you go, to whoops, great shot of the floor there, to see sort of how it'll work out. Because I think once, if you've got a final plan that's got every nut, bolt and rivet in place, and then you got to sit down and build it, it's kind of tedious, you know. But here, part of the adventure is going to clearly be that, you know, we'll be seeing how things work, how it's going to look. Might change my mind over some of this stuff in due course. But yeah, that's why it's a hobby. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself and having fun. So I'm now going to go upstairs and feed my baby girl, who on the weekend got her very own first model locomotive. And I'll return the rest of you to your regularly scheduled programming. Once again, thanks for watching.